Welcome back to the Hidden World of Women podcast, brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Melanie, your hostess again, and today I have another wonderful woman who has kindly agreed to talk about some of her experience with having a hysterectomy, and her name is Lisa. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Mel. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on board and being happy to talk about this, particularly this, topic, which I think many women of all different ages go through or are considering having a hysterectomy. So, and I know that's been your experience, obviously. Can I ask, how would you describe having a hysterectomy? What does that actually involve? What do they do?
Well, I guess, like you say, lots of women go through having a hysterectomy. It is quite a common procedure, apparently.
Really? Yeah.
So they say. So people tell you when you're going through this, it's a very common thing.
Is that helpful or not to hear? I don't know.
And you kind of wonder, why is that?
That's another question. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of reasons why, women either have to have a hysterectomy or choose to have one.
Yeah.
And the process, so to speak, for me. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone.
No. Just speak about yourself. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, for me, it was the process went from the diagnosis to then. Dealing with the diagnosis, then waiting for deciding what you're going to do about that diagnosis, and then waiting for to be actually operated on, and then figuring out how you're going to recover from the operation, and then I guess get your head around what your life is about now after having the operation. So I've never been one to deal with things just on a very superficial level. I'm always, I don't know, for some reason things hit me hard.
Yes.
So and I think I'm just really aware of kind of what my mind goes through, what my body goes through, and processes, and so
that's a good thing, I think.
So I mean, for me, it was a big journey, and but one I can thankfully say, I've come out the other end and I'm doing fine.
So it's well worth it.
But I know for a lot of women, there can be lots of other things that can go on in terms of having to deal with, things like, cancer, especially if a woman has to go through or needs to have a hysterectomy at a younger age when they haven't had children, or wanted to have children. I guess with my story, I never wanted to have children really. And I was 42 when I had the hysterectomy. So
I'd say that's still youngish, to have that.
And I definitely had to process what that all meant in terms of me not having had children, then sort of having the hysterectomy at that age where I still could potentially have a child. Yeah. Because
sure. But it sounds like it really forced you to ask yourself, do I definitely 100%, even though I know I don't want to have children, once this is gone, that's really, really it. And that's still big, even if you're pretty sure you don't want kids, you can't go back from a hysterectomy. You just can't,
Yes. Yeah. And so that was definitely, well, I mean, it was very, very difficult at the time.
Wow.
And I'm not, I can't really make light of that because that was such a huge sort of, I guess, confrontation for me.
Wow.
Because at the time, actually, I was with I'm not with my partner anymore. I was with my ex-partner, and at the time when I was diagnosed with, it was uterine fibroids, so it wasn't cancerous, thankfully.
Yeah.
But I had uterine fibroids, which is apparently quite common for women to get.
Can you just describe what are fibroids? What are uterine fibroids?
I actually don't really know. No. But they're sort of like growths happen in the uterus and around the uterus.
That shouldn't be there, really. Yeah.
They shouldn't be there. They're sort of a lot of women can live with them, and I did live with them for quite a few years. I had small ones.
Did you know you had small ones?
Huh?
Did you know that you had small?
Yes, I did know that I had small ones.
Yeah.
And I used to have very heavy periods.
So
because of them, apparently, because they apparently they increase the size of the uterus lining.
Yep.
And so you've got a heap more extra sort of blood and whatever it is that you lose when you're having your period.
Yeah. No, that's all right. So the lining of the uterus. That's Yeah,
the lining of your uterus. Yes. So it was larger. So I did have very heavy periods for years.
And were they painful?
Not necessarily painful, but very draining.
Yes.
Very, very tiring. And also just very difficult to deal with, because you just I mean, it sounds awful, but it's just there the whole time, the blood and sometimes, you can't even leave the house because of it. I couldn't leave the house. It was so heavy.
Yeah. And would that affect your iron levels and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, I had very low iron levels. Yeah. And I used to have to get iron injections.
Jeez.
Once a week.
Once a week?
Once a week, yes.
I mean, that's significant,
Yes.
Yeah. Like the quality of your life is being impacted on.
Yeah. But then they grew to quite sizable.
Wow.
A couple of them were the size of passion fruits.
Jeez.
So it's quite large there, sort of causing a lot of pain eventually.
Yep.
And a lot of discomfort eventually and pain. And so I ended up going along to see the doctor about it, and then a referral to the gynecologist, and scans and things like that done, and then I found the doctor, the gynecologist. I went to see a couple of people, and they were so helpful. My experience, obviously, again, some they sort of helped talk you through what the problem is, what your options are. So there was the option to try and sort of cut the fibroids out, but they didn't think that was going to be successful because they were so large.
Right. And I imagine that would be actually quite an invasive surgery, really, when you think about.
Probably.
I mean,
they can do it. They ended up doing the actual operation through keyhole surgery and an incision. So they did a little bit through the keyhole surgery, but then the fibroids were so large that. What they were planning on doing was going in there with the keyhole surgery. And then what they do is they cut them off and then drag them through the vagina so that they're not actually making an incision, like a larger incision as such, to get them out.
Yep.
But apparently mine were too big to go through that canal.
Really? Wow.
So they had to make an incision and pull them out. So it's like,
oh my God.
I guess you can liken it to maybe a cesarean. You have to
I was thinking that.
have an incision and they pull it out and that was it. Yeah. So they had to bring them out that way.
So when this is when you had the hysterectomy?
Yes.
Yeah. So they couldn't, because I have heard that before with some hysterectomies, they can just do it vaginally. If it's just the uterus, I'm assuming. Now I'm thinking, okay, that would just be a uterus that isn't oversized with fibroids and all those kinds of things, and they probably can do that. But I suppose the bigger it is, that makes sense. That the more they're going to have to go, we can't do that. You have to.
Yeah. So they went in with one plan to get it out vaginally, because that's the less invasive way, I guess. Yeah. Because, they don't have, your vagina's there. They don't have to cut anything. That's very handy.
Go through that passage.
But because, they were so large, they had to come out another way.
Was that a bit shocking?
Which is fine, because, you're under anesthetic.
Oh, yeah. And did they go through that with you to say, look, this is what we're going to try and do, but heads up, we don't know until we get in there. So they talk you through all that. Yeah. One of the things that was really bizarre, and there was lots of things along the way that was quite, confronting and to get your head around. Mm-hmm.
But with the keyhole surgery, they wanted to go in through, and I can't even talk about it, my belly button.
Yes.
Ugh, and I have a thing about my belly button. I can't stand anyone touching it. I can't even stand looking at it. I've got this whole thing about belly buttons.
Yeah.
And so when he told me that he was going to put the keyhole, incision through the belly button, that freaked me out big time.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I asked him if he could do it below or above or somewhere around the belly button, but not actually. And he did.
Oh,
he did. Isn't that amazing?
That is.
I mean, he was like, okay,
good.
I've never had this request before, but
everyone's unique, So, but that's good to hear that your wishes were respected.
Yeah,
and
isn't it?
Because I often hear, especially women, when we go to doctors, we can get shamed or laughed at or ignored. There's so many different, and I suppose for men as well, but I don't know, there seems to be something, particularly with gynecological stuff, I think it's so important to be heard and validated, and whatever you want, whether that's, an incision somewhere different or some other alternative thing, I think that really emphasizes for me the importance of finding a doctor or doctors that work with you, that listen to you, that there are choices that to go and get second opinion or find someone who, I did that with when I had my son. I saw one, obstetrician, and I walked out never going back to see him. And I thought, there's no way in hell you were birthing my freaking baby, and I'm so glad that I listened to that and didn't let myself get kind of bullied into something different,
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think because you've got someone who's a doctor, someone who's in authority, that kind of thing, or, they seem to know more, they would know more about your health situation, obviously, but to be able to kind of go, could I have this, or could I have, and to have that respected was actually, like you said, like really, really lovely. And I think, if you are if any of the listeners are in this situation where you're having to get advice from doctors or discuss options and things like that, if you're not happy with who you've got, if you have a choice, of course,
it's a bit of a luxury to have a choice.
Seek out someone else who's going to give you that respect that you actually deserve,
of course,
because it is your body, and you want to know that you're in the right hands and that things are going to be taken care of. This man was lovely. He was a younger man, and I think maybe younger men, I don't know if I'm generalizing here, but perhaps younger men are sort of a little bit less old school and sort of in terms of their status and things like that as a doctor. And
that makes sense.
If you're
maybe younger,
I think it's hard to speak up when you're maybe a younger person as well, or
I'd agree with that. I mean, that power differential, like you said, can be quite intimidating when they're the expert, but I think it's so important for women to remember that we're the experts of our own body. Sure, we might not have a medical degree or the understanding of that particular speciality, but it's our bodies at the end of the day, and we have the right to choose who we let do stuff to it or invade it. That they're big decisions, and we can very easily, I think, get disempowered, and we just we just assume, or we're just too frightened to speak up. You know, I think every woman's had that experience in many different areas of life, but particularly when it comes to something like surgery.
Yeah.
And removing something that is, you know, part of being female, we would say, you know, that's core reproductive organ there. That's a big deal. Like, did you, how was that for you, I guess, psychologically?
Yeah.
What was that
like?
Yeah,
you're trusting them with your vagina, basically.
I mean, Christ, you know, like, be careful with that.
And I mean, I don't mean to, you know, like, for the listeners, it's you know, I can laugh about these things now, and you know, but these things are very serious, and at the time when you're going through this stuff, it can be, you know, it can be quite awful. So I hope the laughing doesn't indicate the that I'm not serious about this, but I think joking and laughing obviously is quite healing as well in some but yeah, I sort of, you know, this is, it's such an you know, this thing, your vagina, your uterus, this whole area is kind of been something that's possibly, for me anyway, it's you know, it's your it's defining, isn't it, as being you know, that you're a woman, you're a female, you're or well, at least biologically, yes, you're a woman. I mean, gender aside, you know.
There's differences between gender and
there's
sex.
different ways that you can identify as being and things like that. But I guess, biologically, and you know, I identify as a cis woman. So for me, it was kind of, it was definitely confronting. I was like, I think I had fallen for the idea that this uterus, this capacity to have children and all of that kind of thing was an integral part of being a woman. And I've heard this, you know, other women as well, who've experienced this kind of feeling of like, well, if I don't have this part of me, then am I a woman still? Like,
I've heard that
kind of thing. What am I now that I don't have, that I won't have this, or I don't have this now? That was really quite, I didn't think I wasn't prepared for that part of it, I don't think. And it made me cry. It made me cry a lot.
Wow.
I cried a lot.
Was that a grief kind of?
I think so. I think I wept and wept for every day for I don't know, 6 months or something.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was unexpected.
And I don't think that's probably for anyone who's listening, you know, maybe that, you know, this is just my experience. Hopefully, you know, if that does happen, then perhaps it's just normal. I'm not sure. Or if it doesn't happen, that's normal for
absolutely
you as well. Whatever is,
I agree.
Whatever is your experience is your experience.
Do you think,
but I wept.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
After the surgery, you.
No, this was before the surgery.
Oh, wow.
It was before the surgery. Yeah.
Jeez.
After the surgery, I kind of was. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Kind of. Then you're kind of repairing, sort of physically.
Yes.
For me, anyway. Like, yeah. But before the surgery, so I had to wait a long time to get my surgery because I didn't have private health insurance.
Right.
So I think my waiting period was possibly about 6 to 8 months. I'm not sure. So
that's a while.
But I think in that time, a lot went on in terms of, like you say, grieving for the fact that something was, that something was going to I felt like, something was going to be, this was going to be taken away from me. The chance of having a child is taken, even though I didn't want a child. It's so weird. Like, there's this biological thing going on, you know, sort of deep-seated thing about, well, I haven't had children. I'm definitely not going to be able to have children now.
Yeah. So I think it's when the choice, sorry to interrupt, it's like but when the choice is taken from you, because theoretically if you still have it all there and you're not, you haven't passed menopause, technically you still can. And there's an empowerment, I think, in that. But when that's gone, the choice is gone, and it's the lack of choice, I think, that really messes with us psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I remember saying that to people, whoever I was talking to.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, I understand like that I need to have it, but it's like having the choice to, like, I don't want children, but it's having that, choice taken away. Yeah. And I did have a partner at the time. And so, you know, even though he didn't want to have children, neither of us wanted to have children, but this still was this choice is being taken away now.
Yeah.
But also like the identity of, you know, what it means to have a womb. I think we're so women, like as a woman, so you have like an intimate relationship with your womb throughout your whole, you know, adult life. You know, I began having periods when I was 11.
Wow.
So, you know, for me, I was very connected to that whole monthly process. It's a place, you know, where, you know, things happen and you're connected to that, and so there was a lot going on to process.
And that being the sort of this core feminine part, like you were saying, part of your identity and identifying as female, and that's one of the defining. I've heard that too with women who've had a mastectomy. You know, that does that mean I'm not a woman anymore? Like all these questions come up and all these feelings, and it's not a simple just take it out or chop it off. It's like the meaning behind that is very layered and very deep.
It does go deep. It did for me.
Wow.
Whether it does for everyone, not sure, but it definitely did for me.
Do you think if you had less like that, you said it was sort of a 6 to 8 month wait, do you think if you had less time that you would have had a different, I don't know, emotional reaction, or if it was longer, or that was the time that you had and that was just the emotional processing you were doing at the time? Like, I know you can't go back and change that, but do you have any sort of, I guess, reflections on that, the time and the...
I definitely think the waiting period was way too long. Because, I mean, for one thing, I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah. Sure.
And then the other thing is that my mind was, you know, taking me on all these fearful journeys, and, you know, like, so I think would have been much better to have been able to make that decision with the gynecologist, and then them say, well, how about we book you in next week then? Or, you know, then just get it done, and you know, but you like, there's that whole like 8 months of thinking about it. And
that would do my head in, come to think of it.
I think that was definitely not very helpful for me anyway.
But it's like your uterus is on kind of death row, and everyone you're just kind
of
waiting.
I know.
You're just like waiting. Oh my God, just get it over with. You know, like that's horrible.
That's last meal.
Jesus. I hope that wasn't such a brutal thing to say, but I'm like, that's what sprung to mind. You're just kind of waiting for this.
True.
Agonizing.
So true. So true. And you're sitting there with it the whole time.
And you know what's coming, and it's just kind of doing its thing, and you're like,
dear me,
that's full on.
So true. Absolutely. It's such a shame that, you know, that anyone has to wait for these
Yeah, especially with the suffering. I mean, you're not having that surgery for no reason, obviously. There's, you know, the pain and the ongoing heavy bleeding and stuff like that. I think it's hard for people if you don't have a womb and you don't bleed. It is hard to know what that's like, to be quite debilitated by heavy periods or pain or endometriosis, PCOS, any of those things. Your life can really live around that. Let alone the cycles. I totally understand what you mean. You know, being female and the way we live our lives around our cycles, and you kind of get familiar with that, and in many ways, you know, really, and how different it must be. Do you still have, I don't know, a sense of a cycle in you, or is that changed?
I definitely, I kept my ovaries. I shouldn't say I kept my ovaries. They left my ovaries.
I wondered about that. So they took your uterus and your fallopian tubes, or uterine tubes? Do you know? I'm not sure.
I guess they're in there floating around somewhere.
Around, yeah.
That was one of the things I was worried about. I was like, where is all these things going to live? Like, where will the ovaries live?
Yep.
Without the structure of the uterus.
Yeah. Did they tell you?
I was like, is there a gap?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fair question.
This was a legitimate question.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah.
But I did ask my doctor.
Good.
I was like, what happens in there after this is gone?
Yeah.
And he said that all your intestines and everything else that's in there kind of just all squishes up together.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the small gap where the uterus was just
kind of gets filled in.
Disappears kind of thing. Yeah, because everything else kind of just moves around.
That makes sense.
And your bladder is not supported as much, apparently. So I do tend to go to the toilet for a wee every hour or so now, which I never used to do in the past. So it was
a supportive structure in a way.
Yes.
I mean, and that
was a supportive structure.
Makes sense. You know, that's how bodies are designed, to have all these things. And I do believe the ovaries are held up with, I think they're called suspensory ligaments or something like that. So they're sort of supported somewhere, but they're also connected to the fallopian tubes and the uterus. So I think that's that would go through my head as well. I'd be like, but wait, is it just this?
Where are all these things hanging now? You asked if I still have a sense of a cycle.
Yes, I did. Especially having your ovaries. Yeah.
Vaguely, I think. I think very sort of in the background, not that conscious of it anymore.
Yeah.
Definitely am going through menopause, and having I have estrogen, take estrogen each day.
So sorry, is that you're talking about now, or that was a result of the hysterectomy, or this is just a natural thing that you're now?
So apparently after you have a hysterectomy and you leave your ovaries in, it's the norm is that you start your menopause about 2 years after the hysterectomy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If you have a full hysterectomy where they take your ovaries as well, apparently. I'm not a doctor, by the way, anyone who's listening. Apparently, then you just go straight into menopause.
A surgical menopause kind of thing.
But when you leave your ovaries, it can take about 2 years before you start going into menopause. Unless you were already in menopause, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
When you had your operation. Then, of course, then all of those rules go out the window, I guess. But, So, I do have a vague sense of a cycle, but not, it's very distant. Nothing like it was before. Yeah.
And how was the physical recovery from the surgery?
I think for me, it really did. I think it took quite a lot out of me physically and energetically.
Yep.
The first few weeks after the operation, you're advised strongly to take it very easy. No lifting, no hanging out the washing, no driving, no sort of doing anything really, just really sort of allowing your body to rest.
Yeah.
But to kind of go for little short, brief walks, gently, not pushing yourself. And I had heard that a lot of, you know what women are like.
Yes.
We have all these things that we have to do in our lives,
Yep.
Especially women that have children and husbands and, if I guess
just juggling
house, all those things that people do. I've heard a lot of horror stories that women can overdo it when they're in recovery and then have relapses and then really suffer from it.
Wow.
And so it's really, really, really important to take the advice.
Yep.
And I thought, maybe once in my life I'm going to take some advice. And so I did. I thought, you know what? I don't want to. I've been through 8 months of waiting for this operation.
Yep.
I've now had the operation. I'm now recovering from the operation. So I would like this to go as well as possible because I just want to kind of recover now. I sort of had that feeling in my mind. And so I took it, I really listened. It's probably the only time actually in my whole life I've ever just thought, no, I've got to do this for me.
Rest.
Look after myself here. And so I was very diligent with doing my little exercises and going out for very short walks and then increasing it a little bit every day, that kind of stuff. And when you're in the hospital, they gave me, you see a physiotherapist and they give you lots of advice and the doctor gives you advice and the nurses give you advice. And I took it all on. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to look after myself during this period of time. One of the things that I did do, which I regret, was I binge watched a lot of TV during that recovery time, and I sort of got out of a healthy sleep sort of routine. So I think because I was resting so much. And then maybe sleeping through the day, and then I'd be up late at night, and then some nights I wouldn't go to bed till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like watching TV like late at night, and I think that was really unhealthy for me, for my mind. So going back, I wouldn't do that now. I'd try and maybe watch my sleep hygiene as well.
That makes sense.
Because I don't think that was really that good for my mind.
Yeah.
As in, I think I sort of, maybe I got a little bit, maybe a little bit depressed or something.
That makes sense.
Because you kind of, you're sort of ill. You feel ill. I felt ill still, kind of recovering from the operation.
Yeah.
So definitely wouldn't do that. I think sleep hygiene is very important.
Having a good sort of routine around that and
having
rituals
a better routine.
and
limiting how much time you watch TV.
Yeah, and the daytime napping if you don't need that or don't need a lot of it, because I know for me, if I nap too much during the day, then I definitely can't sleep at night. I'll start later and later, and then you just start on this vicious cycle, and suddenly it's 2 a.m. and you're still watching Netflix, and you're like, oh shit, just like a teenager.
And I wonder if people during it's 2020 and this whole year has probably been perfect for doing that kind of thing. And people are suffering in that sense, and
for sure.
But we have to do what we can to get through sometimes, and maybe that's all I needed at that time. I'm not sure, but I think looking back, it didn't seem very healthy now, so
And I guess looking back, what was healthy, what was useful for you? So the lots of resting, like honestly taking the advice, the medical advice. Too much TV was not good. Like, what else was good, helpful, or what else do you wish you'd done? Or
So helpful. What was really helpful, I guess, how we were talking a little bit earlier about the being confronted with the fact of losing this part of your body. What was really helpful was I did some meditation on the on the sort of the nature of the body, basically.
Yeah.
And so basically what I did was I just kind of went into my mind and just thought about what actually is a uterus. Regardless of any meaning that, society puts on it or anything like that. As in more so like, what is the uterus really? Like, and so I explored that with my mind, and I sort of kind of just was thinking things like, well, it is just like lots of cells, and it's just it's kind of got this structure, but if you pull all that apart, it's kind of just lots of bits of cells. And I kind of got my head a lot around the fact that that's all it was. That the things that I'd attributed to it, like, the fact that it made me a woman, or it made me this, or it was or that it was that it defined me in any sense, or I found that really helpful, because then I was like, well, really, at the end of the day, it's just a piece of stuff, like with all these yucky fibroids on it, and God, get out. I don't really need it. And so I mean, it took me a long time to get to that stage, where I could just go, it's just that's all it is, and that's just my experience, obviously.
But that sounds like a completely different place to be than where you were, 6 months before the surgery, and very emotional and grief stricken. And it's interesting. It sounds like you're talking about the different meanings you attributed to it. And I suppose we could all do that with any kind of body part or anything in our lives. Really, it's the meaning we make of it that is almost separate from what it actually is, particularly if you go down to that quantum level or something. It's a bunch of cells knitted together a certain way, and
And I think also contemplating who you are as a person, not who you're defined by your body parts. So so there was a lot of work done, I guess. I did have a counsellor as well. I went to had an amazing counsellor who helped me, unpack these things as well. So, you should never feel like you have to go through these things alone if you don't have, other supports around you, and that you're struggling with trying to deal with anything. Then going to see a counsellor is hugely beneficial. She was amazing. And she just let me cry, and she let me work these things out and work them through. And I think I did eventually came to the understanding that there's actually a lot more to me than any of my body parts.
Of course.
Sort of I think I started to identify more with myself as like as an this is going to sound a bit wacky, but more as an energy, like a being, a human being, not a woman, not a man, not a womb, not any of that, just a living being, you know, sort of that can live, you know,
however,
and that's it. I'm living, I'm breathing, and that's really all that really matters in the end. That was where I kind of got to, I guess.
Wow.
And that really that little piece of flesh was not going to define
absolutely
me, you know,
or define you as a human or as a woman, but even separating yourself out from those labels, but also the biology to an extent, but seeing beyond all of that to you as your core as a person.
Yeah.
Wow, what a process.
Yeah,
that's
an energy being.
Yes. Well, we all are energy beings.
What I am.
But it sounds like that was kind of, you know, I think that can be challenging, I think, for people, and you perhaps wouldn't, like, I probably wouldn't have even considered that had I not, say, had this conversation with you and heard you kind of go on that journey of which sounded like helpful ultimately, of kind of thinking about yourself in a different way, you know, beyond. And I think that's what happens when we go through certain experiences in our lives, and, you know, often it's the big ones, whether they're particularly difficult or painful or incredibly, you know, ecstatic, that kind of reconfigure us. They challenge us to go, you know, wait a second, like you have to make meaning in a completely different way sometimes, or it's an invitation to do that. You don't have to do that, of course, but it sounds like for you, this is where you went with it, and it's in fact opened you up perhaps to more about yourself. Has that been the case?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's led to a whole new way of living, I guess.
Wow.
Without even really recognizing that it came from the fact that I had a hysterectomy. But,
sure.
Yeah, like I think it definitely put me on a new trajectory in terms of how I think about my life or my body or who I am as a person, or what I want from life, or how I can, I guess, like live in the world. So lots come from it, definitely. And I wanted to say, just in case I forget, like, I think when I first heard that I needed a hysterectomy, and I had the hysterectomy, it was also, you know, like I've explained earlier, it was also confronting, and almost like something was coming to an end, and of course it was. And but then life after having the hysterectomy, and you hear this a lot from different women, and honestly, it does depend a lot on your circumstances, obviously. Not all women. Hashtag.
Yeah.
But it is actually quite liberating to not have that thing defining you anymore, or getting in the way of life, or of course, for women that have maybe that have cancer and having chemotherapy after their hysterectomy, or who have not been able to have children, who desperately wanted to have children, this may sound like the worst thing that I could possibly say. But for me, and maybe other women, very liberating in terms of being able to kind of just move around without blood coming out
everywhere.
Sexually liberating, being able to have sex with your partner without, you know, worrying about having, you know, getting pregnant or all that. You know, there's very liberating for him, also very liberating for me.
Did I was
sex life
yes.
not being affected? Sorry.
Oh, not being. Yes, I was going to ask that. Did it affect
Yeah.
your sex life or anything to do with your vagina or lubrication or libido, anything like that? Was it?
I think possibly. There's definitely lubrication issues. So, but there's so much on the market to deal with all of that. So you just have to speak to your doctor.
Yep.
Who knows about someone who obviously knows about all that. There's so much out there. You should never have to worry about that kind of thing. There's so many amazing products, and also sort of hormone replacement pills and things like that, and obviously communication with your partner about what you need is very important. Where was I? What was I talking about?
Libido,
libido a little bit maybe, but
that might have just been recovering from a big surgery, you know,
and also getting older as well, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
But but definitely nothing too drastic. Yeah, so that's been fine. Nothing structurally.
Yeah.
Nothing. All works perfectly well.
Wow.
All amazingly working well. Yeah, like I said, very liberating because you don't have to worry about getting pregnant anymore.
That's it.
You don't have to worry about periods.
What type of damn contraception you're going to go on.
Yes, contraception.
That we're really bound by as women. I mean, it's fantastic. Like I'm so grateful to be alive now and that we have options for contraception so we don't have to keep having babies when we don't want to. At the same time, we're still... that it's still a heavy burden, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Very big.
And all those times when, you think, oh my gosh, I think I'm pregnant, and then you're not. And then just like all those worrying times. So I think, it's been a massive journey. But one, that I guess you need to I guess for anyone who's listening, it's a journey that you kind of need to navigate one step at a time, and with respect to your own body, your own needs, your own thoughts, your own whatever it is that you need for support. I think it's really important to think about what you need in terms of support. I actually put in I got in touch with, I think, 4 of my close friends, and I had like a little Facebook group while I was actually going into hospital and having the operation, because I just said to them, look, I just want you guys to be there when I'm going in and when I'm coming out, and just so that I can let you know and we can chat. When, just so that I'm not alone doing this, even though I had a partner, I just felt like I needed my girlfriends there with me as well.
It's that interesting. Other females, and this is a female kind of surgery. That's, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were just adorable and lovely and kind and caring. And that was really important. And so I don't think I would have ever done that previously. It was really an important thing for me to kind of go, right, what do I actually need without I'm a very independent person, and I guess I've done a lot on my own in the past, but in this particular instance, this particular thing in my life, I just felt like I needed some extra support, and it's okay to ask for it. And people are actually really, if you're worried about asking for support, then don't be, because people actually really like helping other people.
They do. And I think
I would do it for them, and they would do it for me.
It's useful too, because I think often you hear, if something happens for someone and you go, I'm here for you, just give me a call. But I think it's often difficult when you're in that position to actually make that call. But
it is.
When you explicitly say, can you do this for me? Or on the flip side, I'm going to bake this for you, or I'm going to come clean your house. We have to be actually quite upfront with these things to say, this is what I need, or this is actually how I can offer you help, rather than these kind of vague things, or I shouldn't, or it's too hard, or whatever kind of comes, those blocks that kind of come up around that. But I really love hearing that from you, that you had to get very clear about what you needed and who you needed around you to help you recover and heal, properly. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise it's too bleak being in it all on your own. For me, it was like, I can't just do this on my own. I needed support. And like I said, it's okay to ask for support. And like you said, actually have something that you actually want them to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, it was like, I'm thinking about setting up this Facebook group so that I can let you know how my operation is going. And what I'd really like is that you guys can be there and give me, support at that time, and like my little cheer squad almost. So and they were so happy to do it. Yeah. And then when it was all over, I actually took them out for breakfast. And and just to thank them, that they were there for me. And
what a gift.
that was so it's quite a special bonding time, like I think we might need those kinds of experiences with our girlfriends. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's certainly through those tough times, particularly womany kind of things, surgeries like this, or having a baby, or having a miscarriage, or having a termination, or a lump out of your breast or something. It's fantastic that we have men in our lives, and they absolutely have such a role. However, there's something unique, I think, for women supporting other women. There's a different, I don't know, flavor to that or something. And we do want to be there for, and that's what we should be doing. We should be cheering each other on and being cheer squads instead of bitching and, I don't know, complaining and fighting with each other. It's just so petty. There's so much more power in women coming together,
Yeah, there is. I think it's easy to lose that, and just to try and kind of do everything on your own, or to have that expectation of your, like, a male partner. If you have a male partner, and for a woman to have that expectation that their male partner is going to provide all of this, you've got to be really real about your expectations. And be really clear about what it is that you need and want from them as well. Because they don't know. Nobody knows. They're not mind readers.
Of course not. And it might be too much for one person, regardless of male or female, whoever they are in your life. That can be, it can be a lot.
Partner.
For one.
They might be having their own
process
thoughts,
through that.
Feelings around what's happening as well.
Absolutely.
Like what's happening to my partner here, because she's actually losing her womb, or getting, not losing it, but having a hysterectomy, what that means for them.
Yeah.
There's actually a website that I wanted to mention in this podcast, and it's called Hyster Sisters.
Yeah.
And it's spelled HYSTER.
Yep.
SISTERS. Hyster Sisters. Yeah. But they also have a section on that website called Mr. Sisters.
Oh. I'm writing this down. I'll put it in the little show notes for people.
Yeah.
Mr. Sisters.
I'll send you the link so you can put it in.
Yeah.
And that particular Mr. Sisters thing is for the section of the website there's for men who are supporting their female partners through hysterectomy. And it gives them some advice on what to do, what not to do, that kind of stuff. Which and I think that's probably quite useful.
I think it is, because I think that'd otherwise be flying blind. They might come to the odd doctor's appointment or not, and and might be. I think they'd be quite scared. How do I help her, and is she delicate now, or what's happening with her emotions, or and not knowing what to say or what to do. So to get that support and experience from other men who've been through that, and just to talk through that, oh my God, this is happening, and that was, or to say that was scary, that was scary for me. I worried about her. I worried about, so important to have that space.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would recommend, definitely including them in as much as they're comfortable about being included in. They have worries that they're never going to be able to have sex with you again, and things like that. That they're probably not able to articulate. Depends on your relationship, of course, but I mean, I was worried about that too. I was like, what is this going to mean for being able to have sex, and and all, so but the Hister Sister website, for anyone who doesn't know about that website, is an excellent resource. I definitely utilized it quite a lot to find out, what to expect, and there's a really good section which kind of helps you know what to take to hospital to prepare for your time in hospital. And I would never have thought of half of these things, but I took the list and I went and I got all the things that they recommended. And I needed every single one of those things.
Oh my God. So, wow.
And the great thing about having a hysterectomy is you get to wear big cotton knickers.
Super comfy.
Very comfortable. So that's one thing I haven't let go of.
Fair enough. You think you've earned the right.
From bonds.
Mental note.
So the list of things to get on. Like treat yourself if you can. Buy yourself a nice new dressing gown, robes to go to hospital, and some new slippers and some new knickers, and those little bra things that don't have the underwire in. They're sort of like a crop. You can get them made out of really nice bamboo.
And
they don't have the underwire in. They're just a gentle support. And it's just the kind of thing that you can put on underneath your nightgown or whatever it is that you're wearing in hospital. And it just means that you're a lot more comfortable in the bed, because you do have to lie there for a couple of days. And bras are so confining and restrictive, and but these little, they're like a little crop top almost.
Like I know them.
To the lining of your boots.
Just a little bit of support, and so you still feel like it's not all hanging out. And I suppose in hospital too, you still want to have a little bit of dignity, kind of thing, and but comfort as well. So that that's I probably wouldn't have thought of that myself. Just rock up there.
Exactly. You don't want to be sitting there, hanging, like you said, hanging out. And then you don't want to be trying to sleep in a bra, or trying to rest in a bra. So these things are amazing, and they're on the list. They're on the list. And I was like, gonna get some of those, and I'm so glad I did.
Nice.
And but so if any of your listeners are due to go into hospital or have a hysterectomy, check out that website and get shopping.
Awesome. Get shopping. That's great. That's great. It kind of reminds me of the, when you go to hospital, have a baby or something, and they, there's all these different lists, and some of them I think have got good stuff, and others is just, I don't know, frivolous kind of stuff. But what you really need is these practical, legitimate things that you are gonna, like maternity pads and like these huge surfboards kind of thing that you wear in your knickers that you're like, or breast pads and stuff like that. And if it's your first baby or first time in hospital, whatever, you would never think of these things. So that's fantastic to hear. They've already thought of that for you. And I imagine that just decreases the stress, you know.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, I've got an action plan. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to get my knickers and my crop top and my dressing gown.
It's something you can control.
That's it. Yeah.
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 And it gets you prepared physically and possibly a little bit mentally as well.
Yeah.
Sort of like, this is happening, and this is my new dressing gown.
Yeah.
This is my new robe. And I enjoyed because you had to like walk around the ward every day, like 6 times a day.
Oh,
just to kind of,
they get you up and going.
You know, get yourself going again and stuff. And so you need a nice dressing gown for that.
Oh shit, yeah.
And make sure you get one that's appropriate for the time of year you're going into hospital.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. All these things.
Often too, hospitals are quite cool. You know, the air conditioning. Is it
air
cool? Yeah, and always need to kind of like. I'm always conscious of that. If I'm visiting someone, I'm like, damn, it's kind of cool in here. But socks or those kinds of little things. Otherwise, you should end up texting someone, "Oh, can you bring this?" And I haven't got that. And I think that can, well, like I said before, I mean that with the stress, but that can just kind of add to your stress or feel a bit agitated or. I don't even have these necessities, and you're already out of your comfort zone, you know, and really vulnerable, really, when you're in hospital. Yeah. So that makes so much sense to anything that you've got, and you've got all your little kit there, and you can just let's just get on with it now.
Like your phone charger. Imagine forgetting that.
God, no, that would stress me out. I'd be like texting, my phone's gonna die. Yeah, I mean that's a real thing in 2020. That's really important. That's your main communication method to the outside world. Like shit, we're not talking about going on YouTube. We're talking about connect. Well, like you said with your little Facebook group, you know, without that,
exactly.
You know, that would have not gone well for you.
Wouldn't have gone well. That's right.
Yeah, a little cheer squad.
Yeah. And make friends with all the staff. Like, there's so many lovely people that kind of work in hospitals. And I think I don't know, I guess it depends on you as a person, but like, I was just so grateful that, you know, people would come in and give you cups of tea and little sandwiches and, or, you know, just come in and check on you or whatever. I was just always so happy to see them and say hi and see how their day was going and things like that. Sure. I think it's good to keep that mind of gratitude because it is hard what you're going through, but I think it helps to sort of, for me anyway, it helped me kind of not feel sorry for myself and, you know, like kind of, there's other people around. And it was actually, I really enjoyed staying in hospital, to be honest.
Yeah, it
was a nice rest.
Everything gets brought to you. You're like, it's all right.
I didn't want to leave. I was like, I'm getting 3 meals a day here.
You don't have to cook. Like it's like...
don't have to cook. It was just waltz around in my dressing gown.
That's pretty nice.
There's always a silver lining, right?
Absolutely. And I think in hospital too, you can be damn sure there's always someone sicker than you, you know? So in terms of gratitude and even perspective, really. And I guess even too, I guess psychologically, if a woman is in that place to kind of be grateful that she can have this surgery and change her quality of life and all these things, which perhaps many women throughout the world would not have that opportunity to do that. And would have to live with that for a long time. I
know. All these things. I know. I was so grateful like that I was able to have that surgery.
Yeah.
And I did think about things like that. You know, imagine being someone who lives in the slums in India.
Yep.
And this is your problem. You've got these massive fibroids and you're just in pain the whole time and you're just bleeding out every, you know.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have that kind of care.
No.
You wouldn't have that opportunity. And so being grateful for what we have here is, definitely very helpful.
Yeah.
To, I guess, to the whole issue.
Yep.
Yeah. Very grateful. Even though I had to wait 8 months. Still very grateful.
Yeah.
I eventually got the best care.
Wow.
I was so fortunate. I mean, it's not always like that, I'm sure, but I was very fortunate in that sense. That everything went well.
Yep.
The operation went well. The staff were amazing.
Yeah.
Was well cared for.
Yeah.
It was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think we will finish on that really positive note.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Mel.
You're welcome. Thanks, Lisa. Listening to The Hidden World of Women, the podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube by looking up Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. You can also find us at our website www.whws.org.au. Bye.